right now is 2:57. Debaters, please have your cameras on. Judges, also please have your cameras on. Okay. All right. I am going to put on the timer now, just so you guys can see what it looks like. Okay, can you all see it?
Yep.
Okay, debaters, this is what the timer will look like. I will ring a bell at the 1 minute and once at the 1 minute mark, twice at the 2 minute mark for your speech, and then I'll ring it twice again at the end of your POI time. Priority will be given to judges and your fellow debaters. Audience POIs will also be tossed in there to mix it up a bit. All right. Emran, if you will please do the spotlighting so we can get on with it. All right. So actually, can you just spotlight me first because I kind of had to introduce it. Thank you. All right. Are we live? Yeah. Okay. So, okay, 1 minute left. So we're just going to wait for this 1 minute until people maybe show up. Or
Claire, do you want to reset the timer to 2 minutes?
yes, I'm sorry. So for reference, this is what the bell will sound like. Can you all hear that? Okay, good. All right, I'm gonna ask everyone to mute themselves because we will be starting in a couple of seconds. Please post your POIs in the meeting chat. Please remember this, don't unmute yourself and read it out. All right, stirring. Hi everyone, welcome to the official start of the Tempe Interhouse Debate Competition in Pursuit of Disputes 2020. This year we're starting a little different, so we're starting off with our Year 11 and Sixth Form debate. And the topic is, this House believes capitalism is more dangerous than communism. Today for our first debate, we have Phoenix as government and Falcon as opposition. To all our viewers, hello, welcome. And well, let's get started. I call on the first speaker of Phoenix government to give their speech.
Hello.
Please have your cameras on.
My camera is on.
All right. You may commence now.
Good afternoon to the judges and the audience. I'm Yewon, the Prime Minister, and I'm here to say that the government strongly believes that capitalism is more dangerous than communism, and that the rise of capitalism is a threat to our society. According to the Oxford Dictionary, communism is a political movement that believes in an economic system in which the state controls the means of producing everything for the people. It aims to create a society in which everyone is treated equally. From this definition, we can know that theoretically, communism allows a society to advance together and allows all people to see themselves in an egalitarian standpoint. This also leads to a condition of lack of wealth disparity, or even the idea of socioeconomic classes. Capitalism, which emphasizes individualistic values and a free market, leads to a society where the rich continually accumulate money, but the poor will remain poor. This is because in a capitalist society, money equals power, which is very unfair to the poor and biased towards the rich. However, in a communist society where everyone is financially equal, there will be no such wealth disparity between the rich and the poor, and there will be no extreme poor sector of the society as everyone is financially egalitarian. Not only this, but capitalist activities are motivated by seeking profit, and these do not help people. Seeking profit in capitalism might be able to improve the economy of the country, But what about the people placed in the lower hierarchy of the economic status? Because of the social benefits are usually ignored in a capitalistic society, there will be a lack of social mobility as well. And this is why the government believes that capitalism is more dangerous than communism. Thank you.
All right, seeing we will now move into 1 minute of POIs, any and all, from audience members and the opposing debaters, and as well as judges. Please submit your POIs to either the meeting chat or to the comment section of the live stream. All right, we will begin our 1 minute of POIs now.
One debater asks, since communism is meant to be implemented in real life, do you have any real-life examples of successful, fully communist nations?
No, we do not have a real-life example yet because all the countries that are named as communist countries, such as China or North Korea, they're not actually communist country. They're just corrupted communist country, which doesn't show as a real life example of true communism.
Thank you very much for your speech, Prime Minister. I now call on the leader of the opposition to give their speech.
Okay. Shall I start?
You may begin.
Good afternoon, judges and fellow students. As the opposition leader, I will explain to you overall why capitalism is less dangerous and generally a better system than communism. Capitalism is an economic system where the profiter tends to be individual companies or citizens, and the government plays a very subsidiary role. Capitalism encourages growth for the country with new companies and firms granted economic freedom. They are allowed a sense of inventiveness that leads to an economic expansion and overall boost in the country's GDP. The boost in GDP allows for a better living standard, and everyone benefits from the increasing wealth due to something called the trickle-down effect. The trickle-down effect is common in capitalism and refers to the rich gaining wealth and investing or spending the money, which makes for a higher demand for specific products, increasing the income of those supplying the products and creating jobs in the process. This funds higher tax revenue, where the increased funds are put towards public programs for the poor, such as shelters and healthcare. Both rich and poor benefit from this. A good example is Hong Kong, where they have almost no government control on economic activity, international trade restrictions, and set prices. With a GDP of 366 billion, Hong Kong has economically developed into one of the wealthiest in the world. In contrast to capitalism, communism believes in a collective identity and communal ownership. The government owns properties and companies on behalf of the people, and private property is virtually non-existent. The government is supposed to supply the people according to their needs. However, the lack of economic freedom creates an opportunity for the government to abuse their position and power, which inevitably leaks into the people's daily lives. Promised a life in a utopian society, people are endangered by poverty and a major violation of freedom, speech, and religion, resulting in rebellion. Communism seeks to control every aspect of the citizens' lives. A historical example of this would be the mass executions that took place within once communist countries such as Cambodia, where a communist Marxist government was in place for 5 years from 1975. The people were stripped of their possessions and identities and pushed into forced labor. Those who rebelled were executed under this communist reign. Almost 2 million Cambodian lives were lost. Historically and generally speaking, communism is a system that...
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs, starting now.
One of the judges asked, says that the trickle-down effect did not work during the Reagan era in the US. The rich simply got richer. How do you defend this economic strategy?
I'm so sorry.
Do you need me to repeat that? The trickle-down effect did not work during the Reagan era in the USA. The rich simply got richer. How do you defend this economic strategy?
And okay, the it may not necessarily work in a specific time frame due to certain factors. It's not necessarily capitalism itself.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. Your POI time is up. I now call on the next member of the government to speak.
Do I start?
I'm sorry, give me a minute. People can't find the link to the debate. Can we please resolve that? Thank you. All right. Yes, you may begin.
All right. Communism provides for the people. It supports widespread universal social welfare, providing social service and benefits for those such as public health care and education to everyone as required. The community takes care of those unable to work, arranging the housing and more, effectively reducing poverty. As Karl Marx said, from each according to ability, to each according to need. This gives the citizens a sense of security for their retirement and their children's future. This is unlike few capitalist countries such as America, where 79% of citizens are unsatisfied with healthcare costs. The rich hold private companies, exploiting workers to increase profit, hoarding money for personal gains. Communism, on the other hand, encourages the abolition of private property. The company no longer belongs to an individual, rather it belongs to the workers. The company is also now owned by the state, in the sense that it elects people to take care of the day-to-day operations of the company. Private property is not the same as personal property, so you are entitled to a house, your clothes, and your grandparents' precious china plates. However, you are not permitted to own 5 cars or 3 houses. This will be confiscated to provide for other citizens. You may argue that this is unfair, but did you know that inheriting lots of wealth from your parents can actually make you selfish and shallow? Instead of working to achieve self-actualization, you may end up wasting money for useless luxuries or for a fleeting pleasure. Those born in privilege have access to better education and opportunities, yet many waste this blessing. The rich party and gamble their lives away, while those born poor have no choice but to toil day and night. Communism provides opportunities. Wealth is redistributed among the people so that a similar standard of living is achieved. This means that there will be no unemployment, as the government will allocate jobs to the people. One of the most inefficient aspects of capitalism, gone. Once basic needs are satisfied, people can start to focus on what they really want in life. This leads to society advancing as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs beginning now.
Is it not true that communist nations have moved to a more capitalistic economy? What do you say to this?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Is it not true that communist nations have decided to move to a more capitalistic economy? What do you say to this?
It is true that now, countries such as China and Russia, they move towards more capitalistic forms of economy because they want to provide better for their citizens. This can be seen as a period of transition between capitalism and communism known as socialism, where some form of capitalist economy is still allowed, but they have the idea of like property sharing and benefits for the society.
Is it not true that communist leaders such as Mao had bountiful feasts every night while his nation was starving?
Corruption is a key point in like communist countries.
Thank you very much. Your time is regretfully up. I now call on the second speaker for opposition. I'm sorry, can we? All right.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're all right. You are, however, not the second speaker.
Oh, sorry.
Joshua Wei Min Chong.
No. Second speaker is me. Was it
All right.
not? Okay, sorry.
All right then. You may begin.
Good afternoon, respected judges in the House. I, the Deputy Opposition Leader, will be giving an insight into why communism ultimately fails. First, communism does not benefit the working class. Karl Marx, the father of communism, intended to create a workers' utopia through collective ownership, eliminating class distinction. As opposed to his idealistic expectations, the reality showed that it did not work. Nations that implemented communism resulted in authoritarian economies that only benefited the political elite by taking advantage of the working class. A good example is the Republic of Cuba. The Human Rights Watch mentions that Cubans who are openly unsatisfied with the government continue to face the threat of criminal prosecution. Additionally, Cuba denies its workers of the freedom of association and collective bargaining. How is it that these Cubans are denied the basic right of freedom of expression? Even more ironic, communism claims to get rid of authoritarian regimes, but ultimately replaces and enforces control upon its citizens. Second, communism is corrupt. For communism to succeed, a certain assumption has to be made that all the working class is good, while all of the upper class is evil. Therefore, Marx assumes that a centralized government made of a small class of the working class is the best form of governance. But let's test this theory out in the real world, shall we? The Guardian reports that in North Korea, a nation that is almost purely communist, the dictator by the name Kim Jong-un has a net worth of $5 billion. That is 31.25% of his nation's GDP, whereas his fellow countrymen earn as little as $1,000 in a year. You might ask yourself, how does the leader of a poor country that ranks amongst the least developed countries in the world have so much money? Easy answer, the extreme centralization of power. This means that there is no money flowing between the government and the working class, causing all of the wealth to collect at the top of the political pyramid, while the working class is begging for scraps. How would you sleep at night, knowing that your benevolent leader was giving you less than 0.001% of his income when he claimed equality for all? How would you feel living in a nation that refuses to listen to your wants and needs? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will move into 1 minute of POI, starting now.
Corruption is an issue in any type of government. Is there any way to truly prevent this?
Of course, there is a way to prevent it, but when you give power to people who were previously of the working class and suddenly give them so much power, it's normal that they're overly indulgent in all of this wealth, especially when all of the wealth is collected at the top. This is just giving more opportunities to corruption rather than trying to prevent it.
Would you say that capitalism is more beneficial to the working class, where in India, wealth disparity is very significant?
Of course, wealth disparity is significant in most countries, but when you see the difference between capitalist countries and formerly communist countries, you can see that when despite this is because this is the income disparity between the working class. But when the leaders have so much money that 1% owns that 30% of the income.
Thank you very much for your answers. We will now move on to the third member of government.
Shall I begin?
Can we spotlight him, please? Give it a minute.
Hello, hello.
Thank you. You may begin.
Good day. This is the member of government reinforcing that capitalism is far more dangerous than communism. However, I need to rebut one point from the opposition. When the previous speaker said that communism invites corruption and leaders are hoarding resources of the country while their citizens starve, this is actually also apparent in capitalism, even though it is not one leader at the top. However, there are many rich people, billionaires, millionaires in capitalism that exploit the working class, and they constantly get richer while the poor constantly get poorer. And therefore, it is unfair to say that communism leads to corruption. Rebuttals aside, this speaker would like to bring to the debate the idea that communism promotes a stronger social community as opposed to capitalism dividing society. When a society is divided, the higher authority can penetrate the system through this crack to achieve corruption, injustice, and thus endangering many members of said society. Communism promotes working together towards the good of the people as a whole, therefore uniting society toward a common goal. With this unity and line of priority protecting the majority, which is the proletariat, communism provides a much stronger community. Meanwhile, capitalism is designed to counter that, as each individual is driven by individual gain. This leads to a massive wealth disparity, as previously mentioned. In many capitalist states, such as India, where the top 10% of the population owns 77% of national wealth. Capitalism depends on oppression. It depends on exploitation, greed, because the system needs such a society in order to sustain itself. Evidence: capitalist countries such as the United States encourage poverty and any unfair or unjust treatment, however degrading, in order to assume a superior class in society, which is absolutely necessary for a system that at its very core depends on inequality and selfishness. Only through each member of society seeking a way to put themselves ahead by unfairly exploiting one another can the capitalist system thrive.
Thank you very much. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs, starting now.
Why then has this never happened in any communist society in the world?
I did not mention that this did not happen in any communist society in the world. To be fair, there has been no truly communist state, so that statement could be true. But at the same time, my point is that capitalism encourages this sort of behavior, and it encourages corruption more so than communism does.
Where do these countries encourage?
For example, take the United States. In 2018, the President of the United States approved a 1.3 trillion spending on just the defense budget. And meanwhile, there's so much poverty. There are homeless people all over the streets. And the way that capitalism works is driven by profit. So you can see people with benefits like cell phones, but not have clean water, not have food. And therefore, sorry.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the third member of the opposition.
Oh, can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, then.
Please
So
spotlight him.
I'll start.
Not yet.
Oh,
Not
not
yet.
yet? Oh, okay.
Not yet. Not until the timer starts. Please turn your camera on.
My
The camera is
camera
on. Okay, thank
yeah.
you.
So,
Okay, can you speak up a bit?
can you hear me?
Okay,
All right.
there we go. You may begin.
Following on from what the deputy opposition leader said about communism, the question now should be, what exactly makes capitalism so great? Now, the problem of income inequality brought up is actually inflated, and focusing on it leads to logical absurdity. Then you migrate to the United States in search of opportunity if the inequality there is greater than your home country. This is because income equality or inequality doesn't say anything about a country's overall wealth. We can have equality by simply making everyone poor, but clearly this isn't an ideal society. An important fact that's generally missed out when inequality is raised against capitalism is that all societies will have inequality. The difference is capitalism doesn't just create inequality. It also creates wealth that enriches everyone, something communism fails to do. But what do I mean when I say capitalism creates wealth? It seems impossible that a society that creates inequality can create wealth. However, economics professors disagree. They explain how each generation actually works less and less hours to earn the same amount of money, even after taking inflation into account. For example, the average worker in 1956 took 116 hours to buy a refrigerator. In 2013, a worker could buy a refrigerator with only 15 hours of labor. So I'm going to close by talking about how capitalism is actually more efficient than communism. This can be easily checked by thinking about how much more capitalism has enriched our lives in comparison to communism. And it isn't just me saying this. Karl Marx himself in the Communist Manifesto repeatedly admits that capitalism is the most efficient form of economic policy. So if your goal is to get as much material security for everyone as fast as possible, and Marx claims that capitalism is the most efficient system in producing those goods in excess, wouldn't the smart thing be to just go with the system?
Thank you very much. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs beginning now.
So how do you explain that each generation actually earns
I'm
less
sorry,
than...
you're supposed to answer questions now and not continue on with your speech. 1 minute of POIs, continuing.
How does wealth measure how dangerous a system is?
How does wealth measure how dangerous?
How does the wealth generated from a system really measure how dangerous the system is?
Well, if the overall wealth of a system is higher, then by nature, everyone in the system is richer than if the overall wealth in the system is less, all right? Well, what's wrong with profit?
Is capitalism a stable system?
Well, I mean, the booms and busts is one of the good things about capitalism because it ensures there are no corrupt people on top. So let's go back to your problem with inheritance. All right, if the person who inherits the business, and let's just say billions of dollars, is corrupted and incompetent, you know what happens to him? The free market makes sure his business goes broke, and that wealth is redistributed to the market. So it's not just all collected up in this rich elite, all right? If the elite is incompetent, the market punishes them. And that's what makes capitalism so good. You cannot indulge in inefficient activities, otherwise the free market will ensure you go broke. Unlike communism, for example, where there's no strive for improvement because there's no competition. It doesn't matter whether I produce 1 box today or 2 boxes, I'm still going to get my paycheck. The government is not going to face any competition, so there's no strive for improvement.
Thank you very much. I now call on the last member of the government to speak.
Hello.
Hello. All right.
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Wait, don't switch on the timer just now. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me
but we can't see you. Okay, we can see you now.
Okay. Can you see? Wait. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I would first of all like to thank the organizers of today's debate for endeavoring to hold the debate despite the inconvenience and logistical nightmare of having it online. I would also like to thank the judges specifically for their commitment and willingness to be here listening to us, despite now being the optimal time to nap after school. Your dedication to remain here with us after school is one that I and others on my team truly appreciate. Thank you for being here. Now, from the speech that we have realized from the former speaker, what we realized is that he seemed quite passionate about the idea that that capitalism produces a lot of wealth and things like that. But the problem is, the topic that we're discussing today is not whether capitalism is better than communism. That's the topic for another day. What we're discussing now is whether capitalism is more dangerous than communism. Now, a system under capitalism encourages the bitter pursuit of profit by the elites. It encourages that not progress, but ways to cut corner and reduce costs are the way to keep the clock of profit ticking. Now, the environment takes the biggest hit if capitalism is allowed to flourish unregulated. The rapid exploitation of natural resources and the never-ending stream of waste sludge released into pristine rivers ravages lakes and the beauty of nature. Now, gold mining, for example, uses poisons such as arsenic, mercury, cyanide, and the list goes on and on and on. The fact of the matter is that the laissez-faire approach that industries have to capitalism only encourage such pollution. For example, over here I have a list of many environmental accidents. For example, in Bhopal, India, nearly 4,000 people killed. The Great Molasses Flood, 7 people were killed. Now, the problem with this list of industrial accidents is that they're not exclusive to what is written over here. There are many more that have been present, and there's many more to come. Now, while capitalism provides the environment for greed and exploitation to occur, we can see it all around us. The lack of a feedback mechanism means that the ordinary Joe can't talk to the elite.
Your time has passed. We will now move into our final minute of POIs for the government, beginning now.
Don't you think that communist countries also damage the environment?
Well, give me an example of a communist country. Give me an example. You might say the USSR, you might say North Korea, you might say China. Well, let me just explain something to you. Leninism, which was followed in the USSR, states that the creation of a communist state through the means of a one-party totalitarian state. Now, in communism, what it says is that the creation of a communist society where the means of production are controlled by the people. Now, how can you have the means of production ruled by the people when you have things that are ruled by a dictatorship? And thus, Leninism is not communism. Do you understand what I said?
How would you explain unsuccessful implementations of communism when it is so safe, as you say?
Well, there has never been any communist country, and that's the thing.
Regrettably, your time is up. I now thank you very much for your speeches, government. I now call on the last member of opposition to speak. All right.
Yeah.
You may begin now.
Yes. Hello everyone. So I'm here to conclude that capitalism is better than communism. Equality of opportunity is the anthem of capitalism. People will never be wholly equal. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The hand that makes the corn has the right to put the corn into its own mouth." Why capitalism is morally superior? Capitalism promotes freedom, teamwork, is more optimistic, and promotes equality, emulation, and is consistent with the human condition. Capitalism is more economically democratic between itself and communism. How capitalism promotes freedom? The most basic freedom is to make choices. Capitalism promotes choices. It promotes the ability of people to decide what they want to buy, how much they want to buy, where they want to live, where they want to work, and so on. Capitalism promotes equality. How? In a basketball game against Michael Jordan, I will lose 10 times out of 10. Even if I practice hard and improve my game significantly, I will probably never be able to overcome Jordan's inherent athletic gifts. The capitalist would point out that my attempt to compete resulted in the improvements in my basketball skills and ability. I am better off as a result of my effort. Winston Churchill said, "The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings." By focusing on opportunity and not outcome, capitalism is the more moral economic system. As we have learned from history, including now Venezuela, the main difference between capitalism and socialism is this: capitalism works. As my leader, deputy member, had already said that capitalism is much better than communism. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We will now move into our last and final minute of POIs, beginning now.
Wouldn't you say that capitalism encourages individualism rather than cooperation between people?
Our people works like most effectively with teamwork. Hence, if the capitalists want to most amount of profit, they'll have to work as a group.
Do you believe that exploited workers under a capitalist system enjoy the freedom of choice making?
Yeah, they've been given freedom to express their views on the community.
Can you provide an example where this is true?
Like smart businessmen and people are all aware of this. Exploitation is not supposed to be part of capitalism. Like United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that concludes our first round of debates. That was Phoenix v. Falcon on whether capitalism is more dangerous than communism. Thank you to all participants and debaters for your speeches, and thank you to all judges. We will be back in 5 minutes for our second round of debates. Thank you. Emran, if you'll do your honors. Please do the spotlighting thing. All right, so it turns on. All right, so hi everyone, welcome to the second round of Year 11 and Sixth Form debates. Again, the topic is this House believes that capitalism is more dangerous than communism. Here we have Tiger as government and Dragon as opposition. Best of luck to all debaters. And we may begin with the government, the Prime Minister of Tiger. You will have 2 minutes to make your speech starting now.
Singapore, Hong Kong, the United States, Canada. These are countries where palpable wealth inequality looms over society. With an enormous wealth gap, the wealthy can oppress the poor by paying them low wages, shackling them to their position, forbidding them to escape from the lowest tier in the social hierarchy, which is further demonstrated by Karl Marx's theory. Meanwhile, communist economies can promote social welfare and equality, eliminating issues such as wealth gaps. Therefore, this House strongly believes that capitalism is inherently more dangerous than communism. Furthermore, in a communist economy, the government determines which goods and services get produced and how much is available at any given time. This allows for production level to be adjusted, tailoring it to the country's current financial situation. As a result, this also allows the economy to be balanced, eliminating issues of surplus or shortages in the market forces of demand and supply. In contrast, capitalist economies neglect this, resulting in many negative consequences such as market failure, which leads to the wild fluctuation of the state of the economy and inability to control boom and bust cycles, thus wreaking havoc on economic growth. Moreover, private ownership of capital in capitalist systems enables firms to gain monopoly power in product and labor markets, leading to exploitation of consumers such as increased price, decreased quality of products, etc. Besides that, in a communist economy, the government determines the allocation of resources. Therefore, in times of peril, the government can allocate resources to regions or specific people that are in dire need of basic resources. Therefore, we believe that capitalism is inherently more dangerous than communism. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Prime Minister. We will now move into 1 minute of any and all POIs beginning now.
Don't you think wealthy people deserve to be wealthy? After all, it's all their hard work.
Oh, wealthy people definitely do deserve to be wealthy, but we cannot neglect that many of the wealthy people, many people in the top 1% or 10% of the society, they inherit their wealth rather than working and deserving that amount, that lump sum, that huge sum of wealth. So, which is why that we, rather than allowing them to dominate over society, we prefer equality.
Thank you very much. I now call on the Leader of Opposition to make their opening speech. Please turn on your camera if your camera is not already on. And unmute your mic.
Wait, do I start now?
Please turn on your camera. Okay, your camera's on.
Yeah.
All right, you may begin.
The opposition disagrees with the statement that capitalism is more dangerous than communism because it's the only system that prevents the development of the human race from stagnating. It's a driving force that has, and still is, propelling the world forward into an age of economic development and innovation. A system where a country's trade and industry are controlled by the private sector yields plenty more advantages than disadvantages. Capitalism is what separates countries like Singapore, with a GDP per capita of 64,581 USD, to Laos, with 2,500 USD. That's a 2,600% difference. The capability of capitalism to better the lives of everyone just throws any other system out of the picture. It's the reason why we have been continuing to use the system since the 17th century. First of all, capitalism is a consumer-driven system based primarily on profit maximization. Everyone has the opportunity to work as hard as they want, and they will receive rewards for what they deserve. There's higher levels of competition, leading to lower prices and a more efficient market. This happens while still producing higher quality goods and services with a wider variety for all the benefit of the consumer. This is a stark contrast to the communist system where people are given the most basic of necessities. Furthermore, competition between private firms encourages technological advances that better the environment we live in. Besides that, communist policy brags about the equality of human rights. But how can you care about the individual when the state comes first? This ideology is detrimental to the welfare of citizens. To the party, we are just part of a machine. You are not a person, you are just a disposable part to be replaced. Why should they care about you? The capitalist system is also more attractive to international investors. This encourages innovation and high levels of globalization. But what does this all lead to? Everyone will have a better life, better than if any other system was in place. People will be wealthier, unemployment rates will be lower, everything will be more affordable, and the standard of living will increase. And all this at the cost of what? With benefits like these, it is definite that capitalism is not a danger to society. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs, beginning now.
What do you say about the wealth disparity in capitalist nations?
There's always a way for the government to regulate and control that, as not all countries are fully capitalist. They can have policies to help with poor people, like having subsidies and giving them a better chance to go up and decrease the wealth gap. They also, for rich people, they can have higher taxes because to lower their wealth. Yeah.
What do you say about poor capitalist nations like Haiti?
Like Haiti? Well, these countries, they have the opportunity to do it, but like Haiti, for example, was impacted by war, so that's another factor that will affect its successfulness. And war's not really part of the capitalism like system. It's not something that's caused by capitalism. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much. I now call on the second speaker for the government. If you could unmute your mic and say a few words so that we can spotlight you. Thank you. All right. Your speech, you may begin now.
This House endorses the idea that capitalism is innately more dangerous than communism. I state this because a capitalist economy thrives on the market forces of demand and supply, and this causes a lack of government intervention. As there is no authority to help limit the production of consumption of demerit goods and services such as tobacco, alcohol, and gambling, this can have a detrimental impact on the health of citizens, negative impact on their well-being, as well as a struggle with psychological addiction. Overall, this can have a destructive impact on the economy as the size of the workforce reduces, even forcing them into recession. This further on can trigger many negative consequences such as job loss, lower wages or incomes, worse living standards, and more. This could only cause the wealth gap in society to further widen. A perfect example of this would be Afghanistan's drug abuse problem. Due to the lack of government power, Afghanistan today produces bulk of the world's opiates. It's estimated that more than 90% of the world's opium or raw heroin is produced there. Political competition between two parties may also cause conflict, which is prominent in capitalist nations, like political unrest and distraction from people. When there are two opposing political parties, money that is used to fund political campaigns can be used to fund expenditure to improve social welfare and overall living standards. Trump's campaign reportedly spent $1.6 billion in the span of 2 years, and that is only one campaign, not including other parties. Imagine how many issues could be solved just with this sum. $1.6 billion could be used to feed 1.6 billion people. $1.6 billion could also be used to construct more than 100 schools, finally offering 6,000 children a chance at education. That $1.6 billion could have been used to make the world a much better place. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs, beginning now.
You said that communism completely removes alcohol, drugs, and other substances from society. What do you have to say about the fact that in a study conducted by the former USSR, over 50% of the workforce admitted to drinking alcohol while on the job?
While it is consumption of alcohol is almost present in almost every nation, but it's very high in nations such as Afghanistan, which is a capital country. And this high rate of drug addiction is also due to the war and conflicts between America, and America has a huge influence on the addiction. And it's also, as I said, there's about 90% of the world's opium and raw heroin is produced in Afghanistan.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to the member of government who will speak next.
May I start?
All right.
May I start?
Is your camera on? Okay, your camera is
my
on.
camera.
All right, you may begin now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Carol, the Deputy Opposition Leader, and I want to say first that motivation is essential for success. And this is what capitalism offers. Capitalism promotes freedom while communism does not. In capitalism, everyone has their own aspirations and goals. Isn't that wonderful? The system of communism aims to eliminate social class, resulting in low motivation in the workforce. Let me put it into context. If you know that there are thousands of people doing the same job as you, will you still do it, knowing that they're all doing the same job? Communism requires large groups of people to do the same work. Now, imagine if this hazardous and dangerously indifferent attitude of, oh, the others will do it, so why should I, was emulated in all workers. If this happened, then who would want to work? No one. My next point is that communism forces a closed economy upon the country. Since communism prefers a self-sufficient economy, there's little opportunity for trade with other countries, which is a huge loss of potential profit. This also means that countries will be restricted by their own natural resources. And if this runs out, the country will be left to slowly starve in famine of drought. Communist countries like Cuba, which have been struggling to produce basic goods due to an economic crisis, have been forced to launch widespread rationing. Commerce Minister Betsy Diaz-Velasquez have said that in March last year, Cuba produced 900,000 fewer eggs than the 5.7 million needed daily to satisfy a national demand. With countries not allowing trade and minimal exports or imports with other countries, it will encourage activity like within the black market. Countries like Cuba, the former USSR, and North Korea all had or have thriving black markets because a communist government only gives its citizens what they need to survive, not to thrive. During this 20th century, this distribution of food in the Soviet Union was no inadequate that fresh Soviet fruits were being sold at a drastically higher price in the black market. All in all, not only does communism chain down the very core of human nature in favor of what is interpreted in the modern slavery,
Thank you very much.
it also leads for economic.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. You may not speak anymore. Thank you. We will now move into 1 minute of POIs, beginning now.
Are you aware that with multiple political parties in the capitalist system, it causes a huge loss of government revenue, which could be spent on many other areas, example, education? What do you think about this?
The thing is, right, in capital countries, a lot of countries spends money in what they think are priorities. Depends on what they need most. So unnecessary, like for example, other countries that does not prioritize education might not spend money on education the most.
What makes you assume that everyone would do the same work in a communist society?
The thing about communism, right? Everyone is basically doing the same work. Everyone is equal. That's their idea. They want to eliminate the social class, and with that, the motivation.
Thank you very much.
Motivation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. I now call on the next member of government to speak.
Shall I begin? Shall I begin?
You may begin.
This House supports the idea that capitalist systems are a great deal more dangerous than communist systems. Firstly, private medicine in capitalist countries may not be affordable, evidenced by the fact that a US citizen has an average annual healthcare cost of $10,000, while the average income per person is $40,000, and the poverty threshold for a single person under 65 has an annual income of $12,760 or below. I'm sure you can see a major problem in that. However, this is not a problem present within communist economies as they have free healthcare. Not just that, in communist countries, unlike capitalist ones, corporations are unlikely to ignore social benefits for profit because communist countries have more control over them. Class divide and wealth inequality will also not occur due to inherited wealth, as wealth is constantly distributed amongst the masses. Furthermore, social inequality and worker dissatisfaction will also not run rampant within communist economies, as equality in living conditions and wages is more ideology. In conclusion, communism contains notions that this House supports. Therefore, we believe that communism is more dangerous than communism. And to refute the previous opposition members' points, there is no guarantee that the people require financial incentives as motivation. Since they are part of the society, when they work to better the living conditions of the entire community, they will also subsequently better their own. Thank you.
All right, we will now move into 1 minute of POIs, beginning now.
You focused on the US's healthcare system. What about other healthcare systems in other capitalist countries, such as the EU, where they provide free healthcare and other social benefits?
This House believes that countries such as capitalist countries such as those within the EU that provide free healthcare are rarer occurrences, and it is more likely for capitalist countries to have very costly healthcare, thus lowering people to a standard of poverty. And also these countries we believe are not fully capitalist and are rather socialist.
Thank you. Your speaking time has elapsed. We will now move on to the next member of opposition.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, if we could spotlight her, please. Sorry, could you speak again so your thumbnail pops up?
Yeah, hi, here.
All right. You may begin now.
Firstly, the thing with communist countries is that they make up this illusion of equality and everyone having the equal opportunity for life. But in reality, there's no way of them working around poverty. Communism doesn't allow citizens to own their own assets, therefore making it extremely difficult for them to collect wealth. Even if someone were to be working extremely long hours, they would not be wealthier than people who have worked a lot less due to the wealth redistribution. This is a dangerous aspect as a whole, as communism cannot create a sustainable economy. The absence of private property means that people lose their incentive to work efficiently and ethically. With relation to the previous speaker, it is seen in Taylor's theory of motivation that people are motivated through money incentives. And as previously mentioned, in a study conducted by the former USSR, over 50% of the workforce admitted to drinking alcohol while on the job. Furthermore, unknown to the Communist Party, nearly 40% chose to work a secondary job privately to attain more wealth. Also, communism suffocates individual thoughts and interests. People of a communist system are not allowed to pursue their own passions. They're restricted by the system to do whatever the country requires. Free thought and the ability to undertake the pursuit of happiness is the bare minimum of human rights. And by stripping this away, doesn't this make it inhumane? Communism requires the workers to become selfless and ignore personal needs. This is incredibly risky in the long run, as the workers will all become ticking time bombs waiting to explode in a revolution when they can no longer suppress their human nature. Just as it is not right to deny freedom of speech, race, and religion, the same should be said and done for denying human thought and ambition. Capitalists live in a world of opportunity. They constantly survey the landscape, looking for possibilities to gain, to build, to expand, to create, whereas communists, on the other hand, focus on limited resources, which inevitably leads them to a world of limited opportunity and freedom.
Thank you very much. Your speaking time has now elapsed. We will move on to 1 minute of POIs beginning now.
Wouldn't you say that capitalism also limits others' opportunities? since there's competition amongst the individuals?
With capitalism, I feel like for the competition between individuals, it's like you're self-made. So there's more, with the competition there are more jobs. So there are like more firms and more opportunities for people to like take on like jobs and stuff like that. So the unemployment rate will decrease and it'll give people like more freedom, I guess.
If there are no more POIs, we will move on to the next speaker. I call on the last speaker for government.
Hello. Hello.
For government, yeah, okay. All right, you may begin.
In capitalistic societies, in many situations, we see hundreds living in hellish poverty. For example, some of the conditions in the poorest countries in the world that are capitalist, such as Haiti, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in which $100 can be immensely valuable. And for that, there are 20 that waste billions that bring much less utility based on the theory of the diminishing marginal utility of wealth. And with communism, all the wealth can be better spent by distributing it, even though this might mean that people live in relatively undesirable conditions for a while. When there is economic growth in the country, then more people will benefit as they will distribute it to try and improve the living standards for everyone. And in the meantime, at least everyone will have basic needs provided for in the government, because in capitalist societies, there is such thing as absolute poverty, wherein people cannot get their basic needs such as housing, food, and etc. But in communist societies, they are provided for by everyone. It is provided for everyone. What I mean. And to rebut the, I believe deputy opposition leader, you said that everyone has to work the same job. However, because of like equality, however, this isn't true at all. In order for an economy to function, there are various jobs that are needed in the line of production, such as like doctors are really important, teachers are really important, factory workers are really important, all of the variety of jobs that people have to push society further. Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to 1 minute of POIs, beginning now.
You selected examples of poor capitalist nations such as Haiti and the Congo. How can you negate the progress made by capitalist superpowers such as America, Britain, France, so on?
I'm not negating the progress of those nations, but capitalism doesn't necessarily mean that people progress. And I understand that Haiti and many other countries are poor because of the war, but because they are capitalistic, the lack of government interventions, for example, rations and things like that, might be quite helpful for the people suffering in those conditions. And an example of a country that I believe is not in a state of war is, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I believe Tang, oh my God, I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you very much, opposition government whip. I'm sorry. Your speaking time has elapsed, and we will now move on to the opposition whip and our last speaker for today.
Hello.
Hello.
Is my mic clear? Yes.
Yes. Can you hear you? You may begin now.
I would like to remind everyone, if it has not already been made clear, why communism is unquestionably more dangerous than capitalism. First, I would like to start by introducing a quote, which, albeit crude, embodies our argument. Communism doesn't work because people like to own stuff. Communism is built upon the principle of common ownership of property and the absence of social hierarchy of money. In theory, this may sound perfectly acceptable. However, the world is not a petri dish full of genetic
genetically identical cells. The world is vast and composed of billions of unique organisms like you and me. Communism foolishly placed trust in desperate hope that all humans are programmed to be the same obedient state-loving comrade, and its expectation that we will ignore our natural tendencies of desire, ambition, and individual purpose. This is obviously false. Communism inhibits rather than promotes progress due to the absence of private property. Furthermore, communism is a system which desires to mercilessly strangle our individuality and innovation, to motorize us into mindless machines whose only desire is to serve the state. I would like to remind you that free thought and ambition is an inalienable part of the human condition. Communism shoves a cookie-cutter plan of our entire lives at us. Don't like it? Well, too bad. You don't have a choice. In addition, violence is inextricable, not only in the transition phase from a capitalist society to a communist society, but in communism itself. Mao Zedong once proclaimed that communism is not love. Communism is a hammer which we use to crush the enemy. Does this not make apparent the brutality ingrained in communism, whether it be its hostile foreign policy or the bloody overthrowing of the bourgeoisie by proletarian revolution? In fact, the total death toll of 20th century socialism is estimated to be roughly 200 million worldwide. To end, I would like to leave everyone with this quote by Winston Churchill. Communism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is equal sharing of misery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to our final minute of POIs, beginning now.
Does capitalism not also manipulate people by making the only aspiration the ownership of wealth?
Could you repeat that?
Does capitalism not also manipulate people by making the only aspiration the ownership of wealth?
I believe that the most important thing about capitalism is that it does not just encourage wealth. Yes, wealth does potentially lead to happiness, but there are plenty other ways to engage in the pursuit of happiness, whether it be to travel the world and experience different things. It's not necessarily just monetary gain that is the fundamental of capitalism.
What is dangerous about being a state-loving comrade? Wouldn't you say that the US also engages in nationalistic pride, much as any other communist country?
Yes, that is true, but I believe that the extent of nationalism in which capitalist countries engage in
Thank you very much, Opposition Wick. Your speaking time has elapsed. And well, that concludes our second and final debate of today and the Year 11 and Sixth Form preliminaries. So big thank you to all debaters and all judges and audience members watching. We apologize for any difficulties you've had, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.